one, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Hey, there's 3 people in this room.
Yeah,
It's
who is
Jared
this?
and myself, and then Nick Hart.
Aloha.
Aloha. Down.
Says it right there.
I don't even know how to introduce you. All I know is that I want to talk to you for a long time because we've known each other for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Probably over a decade,
Yeah.
just in the
Seems right.
context of coffee shop culture and
Yeah.
being around town and mutual friends and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll let you elaborate a little bit, but since I've known you, you've always done a lot of work with kids that I find super interesting. I don't know, like set the tone for a little bit more of that. Like, what is flow? What do you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, even just to back up just a little bit of kind of what you said, like kind of context in which how we know each other. Like, I'm into quality coffee because of people like you, and not because I even grew up knowing what, good coffee was. I just all of a sudden, just like in punk rock and hardcore music, like, oh, I'm into these really quality bands, and in, consequently, higher quality tattoo artists and this and that. And it was kind of like the circle of friends. And I always tell people who aren't necessarily into coffee, I'm like, I'm really only into coffee because I have great friends who are started some amazing coffee. And so it's kind of like this like positive peer pressure thing of like, I only know about this because I know really good people. So like, I feel like we met at a kind of an interesting time, certainly here in Santa Cruz. It was kind of like this a golden era of like really amazing people living in this place. And then doing great things.
Yeah, because I think my initial connection to you was probably through Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Halverson,
who owns
brother.
Story Coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Livermore or Pleasanton?
He's in Livermore.
I always get the lines blurred
He
or
is
whatever.
Mr. Livermore.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Livermore.
Mr. Livermore lives in Livermore
Yeah.
and has a dynamite coffee shop
Yeah.
there.
I just went a couple weeks ago. It was great.
It was
Yeah.
such a weird, because he was from Livermore.
Yes.
I think at that time he was a Pleasanton guy. Is this true or no?
I don't know.
Doesn't even matter. They're the same thing. Anyway, yeah. So you were coming around,
Yeah.
kind of connecting with him. And I think you'd been coming through the shops though prior to that, but maybe
yeah,
not
coming
as
to the
consistently.
shops, just like loving the quality of the coffee, but loving the people. It was like it was a I don't know. It was a place that you went to, and it was like I feel like I resonated with it because I've always been about wanting to leave things better than they were, and the vibe at the shop was like, we want to leave people better than they were. Even if at the end of the day, all we're doing is handing them a cup of coffee, we want to give them an experience and whatnot. And the experience was so much more than just like, hey, here's a good cup of coffee and a smile. There was like this genuine interaction there. And I resonated deeply with that because that's what I'm about.
That's you, yeah, no doubt.
That's me. So like, if you were to do what I do in a coffee shop, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Not that I'm gonna do a coffee shop, but if I were to do that, I would do it like this because this represents certainly what I'm about, represent what flow is about. To answer your question about like a little bit about flow, Flow is a youth nonprofit that I started here in Santa Cruz. Officially, we launched as an official nonprofit back in 2017, but we've been at this since 2010. And what started as an after-school program, basically just for the kids who had nothing to do. That was the target audience. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to target the skaters, we're going to target, the sporto kids, we're going to target. No, it was like, this is for the kids who have nothing to do. They don't have anyone to go home to, and the element is fun. Fun, safe, and life-giving environment, And so to maybe the inexperienced eye, you pop in, oh, it's a bunch of kids like running around playing games and whatnot. Much like if somebody were just to come by the shop and be like, oh, cool, it's a coffee shop and the people are really friendly. But you and I both know that there was something deeper there. Like the heart was never, for my heart's never been to be like this cruise line program director. Like I just want to make fun things happen for kids. Like there has to be a heart with that. And our heart's always been to add value to the youth,
Right.
You know, to care about them in a way where this fun actually is magnified because of the heart behind it. And at the end of the day, we're longing for next steps and you know, to earn a voice in these young people's lives, to speak life into them, to encourage them for when, you know, life gets hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially when you're in middle school or high school, to have an adult in your life that isn't mom and dad. And for a lot of kids, they don't have mom and dad. And so to earn a voice in a young kid's life, to be able to, you know, encourage them and whatnot and guide them along the way.
That's really
Where does that
awesome.
come from? Like in the sense of there's a million things that you could do, you know? Like I'm Nick Hart, I can kind of do anything I want, you know, for all intents and purposes. I don't have to have a nonprofit. What makes it so connective for you?
You know what's funny is I believe that now. What you just said, I'm gonna hate myself. I'm gonna hate hearing myself say this later. I'm Nick Hart and I can do anything. I used to not believe that. I used to have this really ugly narrative that even though I was still doing similar thing to what I'm doing now. I've been a youth pastor for 20 plus years. And I used to have this really ugly narrative that said, I don't have a backup plan. So this better work out because I don't have a backup plan. Because if I'm not doing this, I don't know what the heck I'm going to be able to do. I'm not going to be able to do anything. That was a stinking thinking. And that was actually an upgraded narrative to the narrative that I even grew up with before that, which was, I'm a stupid individual. I'm not smart. I'm highly impulsive, ADHD to the core, wasn't medicated until I was 25 years old. So did not think that I thought that I was socially intelligent because obviously I could have a conversation with just about anybody. I was never scared about that, but I didn't know how to quantify that, you know, on a scale of value. Like, oh, that's actually like a highly valuable skill set, gift set. I didn't have that narrative. So the narrative that I would tell myself was that it's not really anything that special. Oh, what I'm doing is not that big of a deal, which is so polar opposite than to what conversations I'm having with people, right? Of like, no, you are a big deal because you're a one-off and you have unique gifts, and no one's going to reflect back to the world in the way that you're going to be able to do it when you authentically are doing it. Because when you're authentically reflecting back to the world who you really are, nobody does that like you. Nobody. And so I referenced punk rock and hardcore a little bit. And one of the things that like hardcore taught me life lesson wise was integrity and character, you know, along with like, you know, adults and whatnot speaking into my life at an earlier age. But like, that's one of the takeaways from growing up at hardcore was like doing what you say you're going to do and being what you're about. Like, don't be a chump. Like, don't be a fraud. Don't be a fake, right? Be real. And I started having like an internal struggle where my narrative was not matching up with what I was actually wanting to share with people. And what I was wanting to share with people was what I needed myself, you know?
Totally.
Like I need that. And communication 101, if it doesn't matter to you, it's not going to matter to your audience, right? Like that's number one in anything. So it was this conflict of like, do I actually believe that I'm valuable, that I'm worthy, that I am, and you know, that what I'm saying actually matters to me too. Roundabout way of saying, I used to have that ugly narrative, and it's been a process. There are days in which I still adhere to that old narrative, as I'm sure we can, there are days where you got good days and you got bad days. And today happens to be one of those great days where I'm like, this is rad. This has been a rad month, if you will, I'm wholeheartedly walking in who I was created to be. This is me. And when I show up, it looks authentic. It looks real. There's a depth and a feel to it. It's not fabricated.
Right.
And it's not exhausting. We've had that conversation before, right? Where you are in the presence of somebody that you feel like, oh, I need to do this, and then I need to project myself in such a way so that they think I'm cool, or that they notice me. Their head even just turns like, well, that's an interesting person, And then you at the end of that transactional interaction, we're drained. We're drained,
right?
Like zapped, because we didn't actually show up. What I thought you wanted to show up showed up.
Yeah.
And it took it out of me.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to figure out, oh man, I met this guy Nick and I want him to think I'm cool. So I need to figure out what he thinks is cool, and then I can be that, and
work
then
it into
maybe
the combo.
Because of that I'll be accepted by him. So the whole time, instead of just relaxing and just having an honest conversation, I'm calculating. My brain's working overtime. I'm like looking at this, like, how did he react to that thing? Oh, maybe that's actually not. Maybe
You're
I
not
can
even
pivot
present.
that. Well, actually this, that, and the other, or like, it's basic. Yeah, it's so many different things. One, it's like it's making judgments on what the other person you think they think or you think they value, which a lot of times we don't even know anyway, unless we really know that person deeply, and it's selling ourselves short in terms of, who we have to be accepted in a group, or what value we can bring to other people. Like, there's no way I could bring value just by being myself. I need to be what all these other people think I need to be.
Right.
I think that's why I'm pretty intrigued about the stuff that you do, like working with the kids, because I know for, like my upbringing was pretty normal, right? There wasn't anything that was super crazy about my life. I grew up in the suburban town. Sure, my parents split up when I was 11. My dad wasn't around a lot. So there's all these little tiny things that add up to not feeling like you have the support that you need to like grow into who you could be. And I say that with caution, because I know for example, if my mom listens to this, she would be like, I gave you everything. And it's like, yeah, you did. 110%.
Still takes
she
a
did
village,
her
though.
best.
She gave me everything, and she did everything for me and my brother, and that's for real. And I was lucky enough to find skateboarding, which was kind of the culture that raised me. But all along the way, like, I really struggled with my self-worth and being seen by others. I just wanted to be accepted. And I didn't have anybody who was older than me or someone that I looked up to who was like an objective third party who could be like, hey, like, I get it. Like, I've been where you've been. I feel what you're feeling.
Right.
Or just a community to work together. Right. Anyway, all that to say, I see some of the things that you're doing. I'm like, oh, that would have been rad to have something like that in my life at that age in a more structured way.
Well, it sounds you're extremely intentional with it, and it's crazy. Your narrative and your story is damn near like the exact mirror of mine. Like, legitimately, like, and same thing, right? Still getting used to the idea that I'm capable and able and all of those things. But like, all that you just said is almost verbatim what I would say in like my most honest approach to upbringing, right? ADHD as well. Brought up in the context of you're kind of an idiot, but so my narrative that I would flip to make me not an idiot, right, is to be kind of a performer and able to kind of be the person to bring others together. That would be my superpower then. It's like, well, you're kind of an idiot at school and you're unable and you're obnoxious and you're all over the place, but you somehow can make people feel comfortable enough to get together, and you bring these weird eclectic groups together, and somehow you make you'll remember their name in school, and that was me. And at the same time,
which is powerful.
Totally. But
you remember somebody's name, it's powerful.
And I went to a school of 300 people, but I knew all their names from freshman to senior year. That was like the thing. And all that was to me, though, is the feeling of being so internally left out, even though I was physically accepted from the outside world. Maybe not necessarily like spoken well of in some of the contexts, like you were saying, right? Like not good at school, not the smartest guy in the class, or very smart at all. But it's interesting to go through that and then to evolve, I guess, and to start learning that these things are applicable. And we do, I think, get tools as well, right? Medication is key to some of this stuff as well, but also the ability to, it sounds like you also had to learn and adapt, right? Like lists and all those ADHD things that we have to do, or else we don't. Oh yeah, we don't do anything.
Yeah. Totally.
It's such a awesome reflection, and I think it's just very relatable. I think a lot of people, even if they don't have ADHD, will be able to identify with that internal narrative that we pick up at some point from somebody who mattered to us, that ripped us down.
Yeah.
And then what you were getting at, which I also agree with, is it would be really, really awesome to have more adults at a younger age involved in some form of mentoring. So I guess I was getting to a question, which is, you said people spoke into your life to help you kind of change that narrative. Like, what was that like? And whether you name drop them or not, like, were there some specific kind of people or like moments where you were like, I don't know, they were kind of like light switches?
Certainly.
I had an 8th grade teacher, that's why. Only one. Really.
Well, I mean, from base level, which is interesting because so I grew up with this narrative. However, that narrative was never reinforced at home.
Okay.
I never once heard from my parents, "You're stupid. You're nothing." No, it was the opposite. It was like, you're a gift. You're precious. You're loved, and like I knew that at my core from home. I was like, man, I'm safe. Like, I definitely was told that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Sure,
you do stupid stuff, right? But was not called those. That narrative, like I said, was just not reinforced at home. Resource teachers were huge, for me.
Okay.
And school was just something that, at an early age, I just made peace with. This is not going to be my thing. However, this is just one of those like temporary jobs that I gotta do in order to get through to the next thing.
Were you public school or private?
Public school.
Okay.
Yeah, public school, and so honestly, not a lot of teachers stick out, but I did have a youth pastor. His name's Adrian Singaris, and Adrian saw something in me that I did not see in myself. Saw the raw gifts in me, that whole being able to gather people, gather a crowd, tell a funny story.
Yeah, you're really good at stories.
Kind of have this this knack. Well, I get storytelling from my dad and from Adrian, like learning to tell a story, and I always just loved stories growing up. Was never, and still to this day, not much of a reader. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, which my wife, who's probably the smartest person I've ever met, tells me that like brain studies show that like listening to audiobooks is has a similar like brain wave function as like you're reading the book kind of thing. So like I've
there you go.
Progressed.
Yeah.
Right. So even still, I don't read that many books, but Adrian just helped me how to hone a story, tell a story, and gave me an opportunity, to like speak into my own peers' lives. Gave me an opportunity to like, hey, dude, would you ever want to learn how to communicate better? Like, you already have some raw gifts. What would you think if we kind of like honed those gifts? Because I see something in you that I think that I could help, grow. So he invited me and a couple of friends, and we just had this like communicators group, and we'd meet once a week, and he would basically like teach us how to write speeches. Wow. So I wrote some like amazing speeches for class, right? And taught me how to like intentionally connect with my audience, and then but not just connect with the audience, but then also like how do you like woo the audience in a way of like, I want to show you something, and then they're on the edge of their seat, like, well, what are you going to show us? And I did this. I was a fruit booter. I confess.
Yeah, dude.
I
Same,
rollerbladed.
I think if you have ADHD, you have to fruit
Eighth
boot.
grade, you totally have to rollerblade,
Yeah,
right?
dude, you blade.
I don't know if you listen to Shane Smith, that like tattooed face comedian. He's a fruit booter. He actually has fruit boot tattooed across his knuckles. I love that. Also love that he's still straight edge, which rules. So yeah, he's yeah.
You get your Royale grinds just dialed
I
in.
love that he's like soul grinding, hardcore. Like yeah.
I played hockey. I was too afraid of this.
I don't rollerblade anymore, but I do have roller skates.
Yeah. Well, skates are hot fire, so
I got some quad skates.
Kept
My
it tight and
girls
right.
are way into. I wouldn't even say way into quad skating. I wish they were way into it, but they're into it enough that I full on bought some.
Yeah, you're out there.
Way too nice of roller skates. People see them, they're like, "Whoa, you must be really good," and I'm like, "I can Rex.
I can go backwards if you want, so, and be whoa."
Yeah.
Okay, wait. I just got to back up. You talked about Flow starting. Was it called Flow in 2010?
Yes, it was.
So it's always been Flow.
Always been Flow.
Where did it start? Because I'm remembering a couple places.
Started at Branson 40 Middle School.
Okay.
Which is in Midtown, Santa Cruz.
Is that where the church was that time, or did you move?
So the church that I was at was called Faith Community, and I was the youth pastor there. And they had a small office right next to the Rio Theater.
Yes.
And our church used to meet inside the Rio Theater on Sundays. So we didn't have like a large enough space for us to gather, and I didn't start at this church to just start a regular youth group.
Right.
Like, hey, let's bring in a bunch of church kids and like do this thing. I was given the freedom to do whatever, the lead pastor was like, dude, whatever you feel like is on your heart, like, in his words specifically, whatever you feel like God's forming in you, like go and do that. I don't want you to like create some cookie cutter youth group. So for me, that looked like this after school program at Branson 40 Middle School. Yeah, so we started.
I want to plug a gap. Can I plug a gap?
Yeah.
I'm so curious right now. So you have, your arc. You're coming up. You have these insecurities, even though you have this strong family foundation, and then you find someone who is, a mentor to you, and you're growing in that way. You're meeting up for your speech writing thing. You're learning to communicate.
And I found a community in hardcore.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are pretty key, cool things.
It was like 15 years old, man, was like this mega ramp of an intersection for my life, for sure.
Wow. What are some of the key things, and maybe this is way too hard to condense, but how do you go from that to connecting with someone, at a church and having them be like, hey, you set this up in whatever way feels true to you, and you feeling powerful enough to be like, yes, I got this. Like, I know exactly how this is going to work, or I know what I want to do.
How do I go from that to where I'm at now?
Like, what gave you the confidence to step into that program and be like, okay, cool, I feel confident enough to create something new to like try this different thing?
I don't know if it was so much confidence as it was like, well, they didn't say what I couldn't do, so I'm just going to go and do that. That's been a majority of my life.
Yeah.
Of this like boundary pressing, let's see. Like my mom was like, you should have been a toy tester. Like you're the kid who's like, hey, I got this like bendy thing. I'm going to bend in the opposite way and see how far it goes before it breaks. Like that's been my MO. And not like in this, I just want to break stuff, but I want to see the limit. Like where are the boundary lines? Because for an ADHD person, if you know the boundary lines, then you're aware of like your surroundings, right? Because proximity is important. So like,
amen.
What can we do? What can we do? Because if you say anything, dude, that's danger.
It's gonna get weird.
It's gonna get weird fast.
Oh God,
it's a good time.
I'm having such a hard time channeling my energy.
So it's
he's got plenty.
I know.
It was kind of a let's just see how this goes.
What do people think of? There's this intersection of the hardcore upbringing, the church and religious aspect of what you're doing, and then you're kind of like this weird ass dude. Like, let's just call it what it is.
That's why it works.
Like, Nick is super.
That.
Like, you are incredibly strange in the fact that, you're out there connecting with people in a way that feels normal, breaking all the quote unquote rules that most people would associate with some sort of Christian or religious situation, right? Here's this. So this is what I know about youth pastors. Youth pastors are supposed to look cool, but they're actually not cool. They're supposed to relate to the kids, but they're incredibly corny, right? So that's what a youth pastor is, right?
For sure.
And then you're, I don't know, like you're out here cussing up a storm, doing stuff. Like there was that stabbing at Aptos High a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Super lame. And then I knew about it because I was watching your stuff and you did this monologue about, commentary on what happened, but also if you need someone to talk to, DM us. This is crazy. But you know, in the little title, you're just like warning, explicit language, and you feel like totally empowered, just being like, this is fucking bullshit. Like this shit is wrong. And has that been how do people receive that? Like, in the communities that you're a part of? Yeah.
That's been a trial by fire kind of, as I've gotten older. I'm 40, pushing 41 now. I've grown in learning my audience faster than I was when I was, younger, and knew that words carried weight and knew that words grabbed attention. And experienced some of that. Wow, I really got their attention there by maybe using explicit content. Anything grotesque or anything like that. Just really like kind of grabbing you by the collar, like, hey, this shit matters. Like your life matters. Yeah. And oftentimes when we're talking about those big things, we need to use big words to grab our attention.
Right.
And It really depends. It really depends on who you're speaking to. Because if you're speaking to a bunch of religious people or people who maybe are very, very conservative, who you and I both know use those words behind closed doors, but won't use those words in the sacredness of the context and whatever the stage is, right? Whatever their idea of sacredness is. I kind of like. I enjoy breaking those like kind of sacred places open and being like, how is this more sacred than when you are behind closed doors and the real you is out? You know what I mean?
Appropriate context is so important.
Yeah. So I've learned over years, like, not the safest place to do that here, or this is a safer place to do this. When you're talking with kids, though, man, you have to be real. And if real is you coming correct with all the words that all the explicits, then that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and it's not even like you have to cuss to connect with kids, but kids have like, and I know you're not saying that, so I'm just clarifying for everybody that's listening, but like, kids have a really good bullshit filter. Like, kids can tell if you're faking it. Totally. And adults can too, but kids have no problem telling you.
None.
Well, adults just get used to so many people faking
adults are like,
that
okay,
they start to gravitate towards
know.
the ones they get
I met
on
Jared.
with.
He's kind of bullshitting all the time.
It's
like,
it's
not even real. The kids will just, you can see the respect for you start to disappear, or the impact that you can have on someone dwindle by you not being who you actually are, and trying to connect in that way. It's, what do you think is the hardest, or what's the process for people coming in the flow and connecting with those kids? Like, how do the kids find you that you work with?
So we've been at this a long time, and so longevity. When I speak to like younger, youth workers, the longevity piece is key, because this is hard yardage, man. Earning a voice in young people's lives is hard yardage, and that is earned. It is not deserved. It is not, I show up enough times and like, hey man, I checked all the boxes, like now I get to speak into your life. No, it is a privilege and an honor, and you have to be invited in. Now, oftentimes that invite comes, because of tragedy, because of some sort of loss, because of some sort of like heartache. So how do you earn that? You earn that by showing up in all the other times. In the times in which it just looks like there's nothing happening, there's no like actual, progress being made relationally, you show up anyway. Whether you're, having the time of your life, or you're like, gosh, we're doing the same thing over and over. Like you show up so that you can have those not so that, but so that when, the tragedy does strike and hard things do happen, those students know that they have someone that they can go to and just process, just share the weight of, the burden of whatever it is that they're going through. So kids find us in all kinds of ways. One, kids find us word of mouth. Like you were saying, kids have like such a filter, like such like a brilliant filter, right? For BS and stuff like that. So kids find us through other kids. Kids find us in the community because we show up, and we've had to change a lot over the past year and a half, 2 years with the whole pandemic thing. We used to have this gigantic after-school program that would meet right next to SoCal High. We'd have life skill rooms, jujitsu, self-defense classes. We had this like mindfulness room. We had like girls groups. We had tutoring rooms. We had like this barber, Elias Campbell from Waves and Fades Barbershop would come in once a week, cut kids' hair for free. We had this like video game room. We had Makers Club where kids were making like sea glass art and jewelry, and vinyl cutters for custom stickers. Kids could put their like Instagram handle on their bike, like Wheelie Kid. Check me out kind of guy.
Check me out at
Follow
wheeliekid.net.
me.
Yeah.
Follow me, sponsor me at
Give me a little, bro.
yeah. Outdoor pump track, mini ramp, 40-foot storage container filled with like all these toys, drift trikes, bikes, skateboards. Kids could check out any of those things. And we had to throttle back from that. But for the longest time, that was one of the easiest ways for kids to connect. They knew flow was happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays from these hours, and after school we can go there, hang out, get some free food. We didn't charge. The only thing that we were did was sign in so that we know that you're here, and then that's your meal ticket. And one of the reasons why we didn't charge or anything like that was because we wanted kids who wouldn't eat at school because they get the free lunch. But if you stand in the free lunch line, everybody knows that you're the kid who's getting the free lunch. Right. We gave out food for free because we wanted everybody to eat, including those kids who were kind of embarrassed to eat at school. So those were the kids 15 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, all these chips, all this fruit, just going ham, And some of those kids would come just to fill up on food, and then they would split, and that's okay, So we'd have hundreds and hundreds of kids coming throughout the week, to flow, and they would hear, hey, come to this thing. You can actually get fed there. Or dude, they let you learn jujitsu here, or hey, we can make some stickers for it. Yeah, it was just rad.
I mean, that's a really dynamic set of things you had going on in there too. That's not a simple feat. Are these a bunch of volunteers, or you know what I'm saying? You just named 9 rooms.
Yeah.
And they're specified in such a way that you're not just I'm not rolling in and teaching jujitsu. You know what I'm saying? I'm not rolling in and teaching. You can't get a random. I'm not rolling in and cutting kids' hair.
You cannot.
So, how's that connection to the community working?
yeah, I mean, that's through just the amazing people that we have here. It's through my eclectic group of friends.
Yeah.
You know, I know the homeless dude that talks to himself, and I know the CEO types who have more money than they know what to do with. That spectrum.
Right.
And both are valuable individuals. Both are unique. Both are created with wonderful design, and both can add so much value and have added so much value to, selfishly to my own life. Seeing them and just unique perspectives in life. So the spectrum is wide as far as like the people that I know, and the friendships that I have. And so we just took a bunch of ideas and we're like, yeah, let's see if that person would actually do this. We share the heart, and they're like, yeah, man, no one's ever asked me as a barber to come in and add value to young people's lives by sharing. You talk about sharing your gift, right?
Yeah.
Sharing your gift. Like we used to bring in local artists once a month, and they would share their craft. I'd bring in, like, I got a lot of tattoos. I'd come in, I'd bring some tattoo friends in, and they'd like teach kids how to draw like an anatomically correct skull. But then they talk about like, art theory and researching. Somebody wants you to draw an elephant, so the artist is going to like look at a bunch of different elephant drawings, and then they're going to compare it to like where the person wants the elephant on their body, and like what's the space that I'm working with, and like I'm researching all these different elephants, and like we're going to draw this elephant for this particular part of the body. What middle schooler gets that opportunity, like in outside of art class, to be like, man, that's cool. Like I got to understand a little bit about like how a tattoo artist's process works, and I got to learn how to draw a sick anatomically correct skull in the process.
What's going on when Elias is cutting hair? So he cuts my hair too. I go to the barbershop. He's a super awesome guy. Like I love his energy because he's young and he's passionate about not just cutting hair, but the community.
Dude, like, he sets an amazing tone.
One of the craziest things that anybody ever said to me was, I think it was the first time he cut my hair. I think the first time I went to Waves and Fades, I didn't book with him because he's always super booked up. But I always like to connect with the owner because I don't know, I just want to see what it feels like,
For sure.
I booked with him and we just started talking, and this was kind of, I think they had just opened. Like they were brand new, definitely in the first year or something. And at one point during the haircut, he paused and he's like, hey, what can a local business like us, how can we help you? We're in the same neighborhood. Like, what can we do for you? And I was just at that point in time, I was, one, blown away. Two, I was upset because we'd been around for 4-ish years at that time. And I'm like, fuck, I should be asking you that question. Like, that should be me asking you, like,
wow,
we're established, like we're here, we have more flexibility in so many ways than a brand new business does because, he's head down trying to do his thing, get it built. Now they've been around for a little while, but I was just like caught off guard. I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's just so quality. Like when he comes in and is cutting hair, like what is his interaction like with the kids?
So I wish that we were still able to do this, but I'll tell you of what it was like.
Yeah.
What it was like was, the first couple times was, it was kind of just like, let's figure this out. Let's see how it goes. And before long, I just kind of pulled him aside and I was like, hey, bro, you do this like you would do your shop. So like, let's pretend that this room that we're giving you, and it was a cool little room, man. It was like bamboo floors, like there was a cool little like some like tag on the side of the wall. So it made for like great photos. You like get behind him.
Yeah.
And there's like this tag on the wall and like kids all around. But he would like bring his little like Bluetooth, speaker in and we had a barber chair for him inside the storage container. So we would like bring it in and it was like the barber shop right there, and the setting was cool. The stool was right in the middle of the 12 by 10 room, and you had we didn't have cool chairs. We just had bean bags. So we had like beanbag chairs, like, and that's where kids would hang out. And there would be this like line of students, and he'd be playing music, and kids would sit down, and he'd just have a conversation with kids, man. It was amazing. Like, what kind of haircut you want? But then further would just, opportunity to speak into this kid's life. And when it was crowded, there wasn't a lot of, I would say, intimate conversation. Sure. But there were a handful of times where the line wasn't so long, and it was like just one other student in there. And this kid's opening up, about his life and talking about, how his dad recently passed away. And it was just amazing that Elias could be there in that moment. And I remember him pulling me aside afterwards, like, dude, it was incredible, man. Like, one, you guys got to follow up with this kid because he's going through some hard stuff right now. But it was just incredible, man. 1 minute cutting this kid's hair, and the next minute he's telling me and opening up about his life and sharing about like what's hard and what's amazing and how those things are kind of going right now for him.
And all Elias did, this is crazy, was he just showed up and he did his thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one time, it's funny, I've been meaning to talk to you about this for years or whatever, but you asked me to come to the barracks because you were taking a group of kids to the barracks.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, whatever. And then at the end of the day, I didn't end up going. And you reached out to me after, you're like, hey, man, if you can't go, it's all good, like, no worries. And there are two things going on in my head at that time. One of the things was like, this feels like something that I would like love to be a part of. And then the other voice in my head was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm going to show up, and there's no way that I'm going to be the person that I need to be for these kids. Like, it's just not going to work out, and I don't know what it means to go to the barracks with Nick and his youth group and to show up and skate in this cool place with all these kids. Like, how does it work? Like, like, what do I have to do? What do I have to say? Like, how do I have to act? Do I need to be a different person than me? Like, I went to church when I was a kid, but I'm not actively involved in the church, right? Like, what are the church rules? Like, how does this all connect? And, this was a few years ago, but I think about it often. And now it's interesting to see what you do on Tuesdays at the skate park with Mickey.
Yeah.
Who, watching him is amazing. And
Mickey rules, man.
We've talked about Mickey here before.
Right.
He's such an inspiration to me. He is...
I don't know if he knows that.
I want him
Tell
to
him
know.
Listen to the podcast.
I actually made him. It was one of those weird things, but it was like a few months ago where I had a bunch of footage of him and I edited it all together and no tricks of me, just him. And I was like, Mickey inspires me to skate like more than anybody I know. And this is Mickey. And he was like, dude, thanks. And he is just one of those dudes who, I don't know, he makes me want to be better. He makes me, I'm happy when I see him. Like, it gets me stoked. And to see how he interacts with everybody around him, like, the skate park is a better place when he's there.
100%.
Undeniably, like,
100%.
everybody knows it. And he is so, there's these little, like, we were there the other week and it was probably 3:00, and he usually gets there like 12, 1, whatever time, and earlier in the afternoon. And there's this little kid with pads, and he's just sitting up at the top of the quarter pipe, and he's just kicking his feet around. He's looking around, and I skate up, getting ready to drop in. He's like, "Where's Mickey?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's all, "When's Mickey gonna get here?"
Nice.
And like, how cool, dude. How cool to not be there and have this. Yeah, this group of kids being like, dude, where's this guy that and like, what is Mickey gonna do when Mickey doesn't have to do anything special for that particular kid. Just him being there and the way he interacts with people elevates the whole situation. So watching that play out over the past year that you guys have been doing that I was thinking about that moment and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I actually wouldn't have to do anything outside of what I'm actually doing as long as I'm being real and showing up for the community. And I don't know, it's just like something that I think about often, and I think that is something that you know, we've talked about this a couple times here already, but like one of the things that can keep you from doing what you could be doing is the voice in your head telling you that you're not going to do it in the way that everybody else needs you to do it. So I like think about that invite to the barracks all the time. And you are like, seeing what you do is really inspiring to me, but you're also really intimidating to me because I'm like, oh, Nick's like kind of got the golden child vibes. Like he does all the right stuff and he's doing it in a really good way. Like he's doing the kind of things that I wish I could be doing. And in a lot of ways that makes you intimidating to me, to where it's like, I have this vibe where like, wow. Cause I think I kind of ghosted you in that conversation. Cause I'm like, I don't want to tell Nick no. Like it makes me afraid to be like, wow, I don't know if I can go. And like that feeling has, I don't know. It's hard for me to get over, you know? Yeah. Like, so I don't know. I want to share that with you.
Dude, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Cause that was wildly vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean,
here's the thing. What if we believed when people ask us that they're actually asking the real us,
right,
rather than what we are thinking that they're asking? Mm-hmm. And even a step further is, and I'm learning this, and I've learned this from my wife because she's got more guts than anyone I know, is asking that clarification, you know, and being even vulnerable and honest in those moments of like, dude, that question actually terrifies me because I don't know if you want me to show up or if you want who I think you want to show up, kind of thing.
Right.
But I get that, man. I totally get that. I'll be completely honest. On the way over here today, my thought and my prayer was that, hey, you know what? I don't want this to be anything other than just a fun conversation among friends that happens to be recorded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to be thinking that there's a camera looking at me. I don't know how many cameras are looking at me.
At least 20.
At least.
We got a big production going on.
It's a wild production,
yeah,
man.
Totally. PA guy's killing it.
Mitch.
Mike.
Yo.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Thanks for listening, y'all. This podcast is an extension of our mission to inspire connection by creating memorable experiences. If you want to get more acquainted with what we do, you can go on over to catandcloud.com. There you'll find a little bit of everything. If you want coffee, we got coffee there. If you want to be directed to some other magic media, basically it's your hub for all things Cat and Cloud. If you want to dive in on a deeper level, we do have a Patreon. It's $5 a month, about the price of a latte each month. You get a peek behind the scenes of what we do here, unpacking some of the ideas that we talk about during this podcast, rants and raves, Q&As, Jared and I just talking shit together. Biased opinion, yes, but I think it's a lot of fun. So thanks for listening. Go out and inspire someone to do something amazing. Bye.